So I have been hiking and camping most of my life. I went on my first camping trip before I could even walk. I've been backpacking since about 2011, and along the way I have learned a lot, most of it the hard way. So in this video, I want to offer 5 tips for new or beginning backpackers that I hope will make your first few trips easier than my first few trips had been. So the first tip I want to offer is go online and download some kind of a gear list. REI's got a pretty comprehensive one. Outdoor Vitals has one that actually goes into kind of detailed explanations as to why you should carry each piece of gear, which I found really helpful. They're all over the place. So wherever you find one, download and use a backpacking gear checklist. The reason behind that, we all know you need shelter. You need something to sleep in. You need something to carry your gear in. But there are some other smaller pieces of gear that are just as critical that you may not think of unless you see it written down. Tip number 2. This is especially for first-time backpackers or new backpackers who've just bought all brand new equipment. Test your gear out before you hit the trail. Set it up in your living room, set it up in a local park. If you have like a common area in the apartment complex that you live in, set up your tent, tear it down, set it up again, tear it down. Make sure you know all the intricacies of how your shelter works. Some shelters are super intuitive and you can just set them up and they make perfect sense. Some shelters are a little more complicated. So depending on the shelter you have, you don't want to get to your first night of camp and realize you don't know how to set up your shelter. Same goes for your air mattress. If you're carrying one of those, blow it up before you get out on trail. I have more than once bought a brand new pad and it had a defect, it had a leak. Had I not blown that up at home, I would have gotten out on trail and found out that I don't have a nice, comfortable, inflatable mat to sleep on because it's leaking air. You want to make sure that you know how all your gear works, how it functions, because it's very likely, especially on your very first backpacking trip, that you may overestimate your hiking ability and end up getting to camp at or near dark. So you want to make sure you can set up your shelter, set up your sleep system, set up your cook kit in the dark. So that brings me to my third tip, my third point for this video. Set reasonable goals for yourself. You know better than anyone what your fitness level is. You know better than anyone, how tired are you after you take your dog for a walk? How tired are you after you take a walk to the grocery store or what have you? You know better than anyone what that feels like. Now, some people may be able to just jump out on the trail and hike the PCT as their first hike. I know a few people who've done that, and kudos to you. I couldn't have done it. My early hikes were, 8 miles round trip, and then 10 miles round trip, and then 12 miles round trip, just slowly kind of building up and finding where my comfort zone was and finding where my fitness level was, improving as needed, and building and building and building until I got to the point where I can now do 25, 30-mile days without too much problem. Not everybody can do that right out of the gate. And I think one of the negatives of YouTube is you watch all these experienced hikers and they're hiking these huge, multi-month, multi-thousand-mile trails, and you think, well, that's what backpacking is, so I have to go hike the PCT or I have to go hike the AT. And you don't have to come out of the gate so hot. So set reasonable goals for your fitness level and your comfort level. So the next tip I want to offer, especially for brand new backpackers, because your first few trips may be relatively short, so you could have extended amounts of time in the campsite. One of the things I hear most often from people who've tried backpacking and decided that it just wasn't for them, that it's boring. Oh gosh, I got to camp and I was just there for like 12 hours and I was so bored. I didn't know what to do with myself. Well, yeah, You didn't bring a book, you didn't bring a watercolor kit, you didn't bring something to occupy your time while you're at camp. Now, once you've built up your fitness level and you're covering big miles and you're spending less and less and less time at camp, those luxury items become less important. But when you're just starting out, you do want to have something with you that you enjoy doing to keep yourself occupied while you're in the campsite. My fifth tip for new backpackers, don't be afraid to suck at this. Your first pitch of your tent in the field might look like it's about to fall over. Your first backpacking trip might be a complete disaster. Maybe you've taken a wrong turn and you end up at a completely different campground than you had planned on. Maybe you get spooked by an animal sighting and you decide, I'm going back to the car. That is all part of the natural learning process and the learning curve of backpacking. So don't be afraid to be bad at this. Take that opportunity to learn. Why was your tent pitch so loose and floppy? What did you do wrong? How can you improve in the future? How did you take that wrong turn? Where did you miss your route? How can you improve that in the future? You're gonna be bad at this. I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I still make some pretty colossal mistakes. We have managed to land at the wrong lake. I have no idea how we pulled this off. There's a slight rub in the plan, as there seems to be this week with every plan I've come up with. I forgot my shoes. So just don't be afraid to suck at it just a little bit. As one final kind of bonus tip, because this is something that comes up a lot, and I've talked to a lot of new hikers who have suffered, who have caused themselves injury because they didn't do this one little simple task: trim your toenails. If your toenails are too long, you're on an extended downhill section. Your toe is mushing up against the toe box of either your trail runner or your boot. And that's how people lose toenails. That's how people tear holes in their socks. And it's just really, really uncomfortable. So as my bonus tip before I say goodbye, remember to trim your toenails. 3, 2, 1. I've lost count. That's what's happened here. Okay, so fifth tip.